Well, a very, very happy Thursday, and welcome to another episode of the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin. Today is December 4th of 2025, and I do want to apologize for not having an episode on Tuesday and Wednesday. As I mentioned earlier this week, I was down and out with the weather. It was kind of, I'm going to call it like a sinus infection that came through our family. You know, my girls they take medicines. They go in regularly for shots for their allergies, and even at the state they've come a long ways over the last couple of years. They still have severe allergies. I know growing up, my allergies were really bad. My wife's allergies are pretty bad. And in this household, there's just no hiding or running away. No matter what the medications you take, no matter if you stay on top of it, stay warm, stay, personal hygiene check, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. If somebody gets sick, they're going to pass it around. Our son, 2 years old, he gets sick, but he always gets up in our face. And it's one of the things as a parent, as an adult, that you could do as long, all you could do is what you can control. You can't go stay, 6, 7 feet away from a 2 year old and expect him to understand why mommy and daddy doesn't want to be near him because he's not feeling good. So it's one of those things, unfortunately, that if someone gets sick in the household, it gets passed around to everyone. It wasn't bad on Thanksgiving, but people have it kind of came and went, and we kind of all kind of got that share. I got the back end of it on Sunday, heading into Monday, you know. And on top of that, I think what got really worse yesterday and Tuesday was this cough that I still have along with the allergies. So the medications I was trying to take to kind of help get this out of my system made me drowsy. I felt, just out of it. I didn't feel like myself. I just wasn't able to come on here and give you an episode as much as I would have liked to. So I do apologize. The good news is that our household, Christmas shopping's all done. Everything's wrapped. Everything's hidden. Everything's ready to go for Christmas coming up in just a few weeks. That is always another big thing on the parent radar. I don't know how you guys handle Christmas. I know for me, it's a process, not just, buying your typical gifts for everyone, but also making sure that you're satisfied. And one thing that I found myself as an adult and as a parent, I've never seemed to be satisfied with the amount of gifts that I, have for each child underneath that tree. Now, financially, we don't live in a society that, 15, 20 years ago, maybe your mothers and, fathers were able to, give you that ultimate Christmas. You're opening up 20 gifts and it's crazy. No, it's, it has changed a lot. I remember growing up, and I know this is a topic for a different episode, but our Christmas, tree was filled to the brim. Now, I grew up in a family of five. I had a brother, a sister, and so everyone kind of got something. But it was, the comparison. I'm just trying to share that experience with my family, with my children, especially while they're young and while that spirit is alive as well. So, was able to at least take advantage of that this week. So I'm thankful for that. And we're able to move along. But on today's episode, I wanted to come in and focus on another week of the playoff standings. We're in week 14. There's 5 more weeks of the NFL. Okay. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's 5. I've counted them on my fingers. And we're at that stage where we've already seen those 2, 3 teams that have been eliminated from the postseason. And then we get those teams that are on the verge of being eliminated, but have the possibility, the slightest chance, if everything goes their way, that they can either pull off a division win or pull off a back-end wild card spot. And sometimes it's even hard to think about that. So my goal today is to kind of paint you that picture. Now, as we get closer to the postseason and the end of the season, that picture becomes clearer. But I want to do the best I can to give you this image of what the NFL is looking at as of today, as we head into Thursday Night Football. Maybe some intriguing matchups that we want to focus, not just two top teams playing each other for division rights, but maybe it's a team that's on the verge of being eliminated from the postseason entirely. And that game can be a big factor to where teams stand among the 7 rankings on each side of the conference. Or it can affect an entire division. Now, we always talk about the AFC North because we support the Bengals. And they have that hindsight that if everything goes their way, we can, they could possibly see a postseason run. But I don't feel like it's justice on this channel not to at least talk about some of the other divisions. So I'm going to do my best to sit down. We're going to first take a look at the NFC. We're going to look at the division first and then break down the wild card, who's in the hunt and who's completely eliminated. So I got everything popped up right now. So bear with me. I'm going to try to make this as clear as possible so that you as a fan, no matter what team you're supporting, you understand heading into week 14 what we are walking into. So let's take a look at the NFC East. We have the Philadelphia Phillies or Philadelphia Eagles. Gosh, it's not baseball season. We have the Dallas Cowboys, followed by the Washington Commanders, and then the New York Giants in that order. There's about 2 to 3 games in between each team in that division. And the New York Giants have already been posted as eliminated from both the division and the wild card. I think my understanding is that the wild card, the record for the 7th spot in the wild card is a 9-4. So if you look at that, that's 6. So if you think about that, let's just paint you this picture. That's 7 games that we don't have because there's only 5 weeks left in the NFL season. So now make 7 games for the Giants and 6 games for the Commanders. So Commanders and Giants, not a chance for the wild card spot. The Commanders, the Giants don't have a chance for the division. They are 6 games back of the Eagles. So the 2 things that I'm looking at, there's 3 things that I'm looking at. I'm looking at the standings, overall standings, the division standings or records, and then their upcoming schedule and what they have to work with. So we're going to work backwards. The Commanders are 3-9. They're 1 game away from being eliminated. They are 1-1 in their division so far this year. I think that they have an upcoming schedule here over the next 5 weeks where they are playing nothing but their division. Besides this weekend where they are taking on the Minnesota Vikings, you find them next week in New York to take on the Giants. You find them taking on Philadelphia and Dallas at home, which could be a favor for them. But then they finish the season off in Philadelphia in hopes to knock off the Eagles. Now, in order for Washington to even entertain that idea, right? Well, all they can do, let's talk about what they can do, is win out. And the best record they could come up with is a 8-9 record. Okay. They will move to 5-1 in the division record. And as of right now, Detroit or Dallas, for that example, that means they would beat Dallas. Okay, because so Washington has a 1-1. If they win out, that means they beat the Cowboys, which will give them 2 losses. They will finish off the regular season with a 5-1 divisional record, and that will give them the lead over the Dallas Cowboys or any team that ties them with an 8-9 record. Now, what does that mean? That means the Cowboys, they are 6-5-1. Okay. If you give them a loss against Washington, okay, they have Detroit, which is tonight, and Detroit desperately needs a victory here. They're on the road, by the way. Then you have Minnesota, who is also on the verge of being eliminated. The Chargers, that I think that's a coin flip in my opinion. And then you have the Giants, who've already been eliminated. At this point, the Giants are either playing for the first round draft pick of 2026, or they're playing to keep one of their divisional opponents out of the postseason. So you would, if you give, that would be 6-1, and just say, let's say they lost against the Lions, that would be 6-6 or 6-7-1. They would have to win at least 3 games, given that Philadelphia also loses out. Now we talk about Philadelphia and the possibility of losing out. They're 8-4. They have the Chargers on the road. That means the Chargers would have to beat them. The Raiders would have to beat them. Obviously, the Commanders will have to beat them twice. And then Buffalo's going to have to beat them. So if you think about this, to eliminate the Commanders, Eagles have to win 1. The Eagles winning 1 would also give the Eagles a winning record for the season. It'll get them back to the postseason. Then it just becomes, all right, can we finish off this division? Because if they win 1, that's 9. And now we're just waiting to see what the Cowboys do. That's what I'm looking at here. So Washington's favorite, it's just you're looking at what the Eagles do. They could be eliminated as early this week if the Eagles beat the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. So let's look at those Cowboys. They're 2 games back. I'm going to say they're a game and a half back, right? They got 12 games, 12. So they have the 3-1 division record. So not only they would have to win 2, but the Eagles would have to lose 2. And the Eagles and the Cowboys don't see each other face to face. I see that the Eagles have a little bit more easier schedule based off of the opponents that I see. We see that the Chargers are struggling. The Raiders are at the bottom of the division, as well as the Commanders, and you see the Commanders twice. Buffalo could be a coin flip because they're not been on top of their game. But it seems to me that the Eagles have a clear shot at winning the NFC East division. So then you ask yourself, well, does the Cowboys have what it takes to be in the wild card? Because the wild card looks as easy as a 9-4 and a 9. So 9-4 is the 7th spot, and that's held by the Niners. The Packers are 8-3-1, and that's held by that's number 6. And then the Seahawks are 9-3. Well, following behind the Packers, you have Detroit at 7-5, and then the Cowboys at 6-5-1. This is why tonight's game, Thursday Night Football, it's going to be so important, because if the Cowboys beat the Lions, then they replace the Lions, and now they're only 2 games back of the 49ers. If the and if they can, 49ers coming up schedule, and I'll pop that up here in a moment. It's all flipping pages here because I got everything else in front of me. The 49ers, they have this bye, so they have to sit around and wait. But the good news is that there's no team in position this week that can replace the 49ers in the postseason. So if the Lions win, they move to 8-6. They come up and creep closer. And thank goodness that the 49ers don't have to face the Lions down here in the back end. But the 49ers have Tennessee, Indianapolis, Chicago, and Seattle. So it's not going to be a walk through the park, considering that Indianapolis is on the road. So if the Cowboys could hold off and win, they will replace Detroit in the standings. They'll just switch. And they'll be fighting to keep up with the 49ers, as they would have to win 2 more games to replace them, while the Niners would have to lose. Now, we talked about, well, maybe you look at the division. So the Cowboys have their chances out for them. But all the Cowboys can do, and you're going to hear a lot on this in this episode, is they're just going to have to win their ball games. I see 2 big games on the dock that can define what the outcome of their season holds. Otherwise, there's no one in their way other than Detroit right now coming up tonight that is going to be the reason why they did not make the postseason. So that is the NFC East division. Let's jump into the NFC North division, because I kind of only expected that the Lions and the Packers would have been challenging each other, and the rest of it would have been separated. But the Bears have really made some sort of mark, and it's just, to me, I'm baffled to see, what's coming up, with Caleb Williams, and they've just been on a roll, and they're kind of, for me, this underdog team that I'm excited to watch. Right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm excited to watch. So we got to go back to the bottom of the division. It's the Bears. Right now, the standing holds the Bears at 9-3. The Packers 8-3-1. The Lions 7-5. And the Vikings 4-8. That is a 5-game difference between the Vikings and the Bears. The Bears are only 1-2 in the division, while the Vikings are 2-2. The Vikings did beat the Bears back in week 1. So if the Vikings wanted a chance, this would, given that the Lions lose a few games and they don't get to 9 wins, if the Packers lose a few games and don't get to 9-3, and this also given if, to just talk about the division purpose, if the Bears lose outright, the Vikings will have to win out in order to win the division. It'll move them to 3-2 in the division. They only have one more division game. Two more. No, yeah, two more division games. And they have upcoming schedule for the Vikings is Washington, in Dallas, in New York, home to Detroit, home to Green Bay. So everything is on the East Coast. I don't want to rule out the Vikings just yet, but one loss is going to have them eliminated. And they're already playing this catch up, knowing that there are not just one, not two, but three teams ahead of them. And they're only playing two of those three teams twice. They've already played the Bears a while back ago. If we go back to week 11, I'm going to say, for this load. Yeah, the Vikings. So they split the series with the Vikings. So the possibilities are very slim. Let's go to Detroit, because that's the next runner-up team that is 7-5. They're on the outside looking in. They have a Thursday night football game against Dallas tonight. They lost against the Packers last week, or on Thanksgiving. Dallas and the Detroit Lions both lost their games. And this is going to be a big game. Like I said, you're 2 games back of the 49ers, who hold the 7th position. Now, right now you're 1-3, so you're no better than the Bears in the division alone. And all you have coming up is Minnesota and Chicago at the end. You're going over to face the Rams. That is a dominant team after the Cowboys. You have the Steelers, which maybe you could be able to get one ahead on. I would challenge, I would say, and just this is a prediction for me, but the Lions beat the Cowboys, lose to the Rams, beat the Steelers, beat Minnesota, and I don't know, let's just say they even beat. That's 4 wins. I'd put them up at 11. And I'll give you the Bears a loss. And we'll get back to the Bears in a moment. We'll see how that goes. That means they would be, 2-4. So they'd have the bottom end of the division. But that goes up to 11, and they don't see the 49ers. So it's all going to come down to what that entails. Let's get over to Green Bay real quick, because they have Chicago here this week. And when did they face Chicago? Earlier this year. No, they see Chicago in 3 weeks. So Green Bay is not settling for the number 6 seed in the wild card. A matter of fact, because look, right now, as the wild card stands is pictured, Chicago currently holds the number 1 bye. If you think about it, if you can maintain the number 1 or number 2 bye, which the Rams hold the 2nd position, then you're kind of setting yourself up for success. So the Packers are clearly focused on winning this division. They also have a undefeated streak going for them in the division. And so they also face the Bears twice. So you could, including this Sunday, which is going to probably be a game that a lot of people would want to watch and tune into. I know that's a game for me. But Green Bay looks to dominate their division. They don't really have much of a challenge afterwards. Minnesota, they'll wrap things up on the season. Baltimore, that are struggling as is, and that they're home for that. But then you also have Denver. So These next 3 weeks may be the most challenging part, but the outcome will come with great rewards as you will capture the division, um, especially if you can at least win one of these two and find a way to at least tie with the Bears. Bears, that this team that I think a lot of people are impressed about, they they don't have they have their work cut out for them. I feel like the only back off week which they have, which is nice because it's right in between them and the Packers, is this Cleveland Browns team. They're in Green Bay, home to Cleveland, home to Green Bay, in San Francisco, and home to Detroit. You would hope that for so many years, we've seen the NFC North come down to the final game where it would be against two teams. One's going to be eliminated and one's going to the postseason. I've always seen Green Bay and Chicago. I've seen Green Bay and Detroit. I would like to see Chicago and Detroit. And to know that this is a matchup that is actually pretty interesting to watch, then I think this is all for all the marbles. That would probably be, one of my favorite games that I've have circle on this list is the Detroit and Bears game. But, it's still up in the air for anybody. I think right now Green Bay has a little bit of an advantage, although they're not leading the division. You got to remember that they still have a tie under their belt that kind of gives them a little bit of a curve to all this race. But this could have been easy as much as a win, and they would have easily taken over the division if so. So look out for what's to come here over the next few weeks in the NFC North division. All right. The NFC South division currently has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 1 with a 7-5 record. They're also 2-0 in their division. The Carolina Panthers are 7-6, but they have a 2-1 record in their division. Atlanta Falcons are 4-8. They are just 3 games back of a postseason opportunity with a 1-3 divisional record. And the New Orleans Saints that are 2-10, they have been eliminated from both the division and the wild card. Let's remember the bottom seed of the wild card is 9 wins. I'm going to start off with I'm going to just jump over here to Tampa Bay real quick because I'm pretty sure they've already had their bye. I'm sorry, Carolina. Carolina has their bye this week. So they have to sit back and watch. Now, Tampa Bay is 2-0 against their division. And they have the Saints knocked out. They'll see Atlanta and then Carolina twice. The Falcons are 3 games back of the division, but they have a 1-3 shot. So even they would honestly have to win the next 2. And the only other 2 division games that they have is in Tampa Bay next week and home to the Saints. You can almost cross off that Saints win as a win, which will move them to 5-8. The Rams are a complicated team. I think it would be a coin flip between the Saints and the Cardinals for the game on the 21st. But Atlanta has some struggles ahead of them. They got to deal with the Seahawks this coming up Sunday, and then they're in Tampa. Okay, we know Tampa is good. They're in between. Excuse me. We know that the Buccaneers are a good team to be, but they're not a good team to join with the heavyweights like the Eagles and the Rams. But they're good enough to be in the mix and the conversation piece that they should, and I say they should, hold down this division comfortably. They have New Orleans, they have Atlanta, and they have Miami. The interesting part is going to resign with how Carolina comes after their bye. If Tampa Bay is going to want to win against the Saints, they should pick it up. It should move to 8-5. They'll have the 1 game advantage, and they'll have the 4th seed of the division. But then you get around to the Panthers will get a chance to have sloppy seconds with the Panthers the following week. So that should move them up to 8-6, while the Buccaneers should have an interesting game against the Falcons. If let's say they beat the Falcons, that's 9-5. Carolina gets to see Tampa Bay twice. The first game is at home. Let's say Carolina picks up. They're right there where they want to be. But the problem is, and in a tie scenario, Tampa Bay will be 4-1, while the Panthers will be 5-2, or not 4-1. There will be 4-1. Both of them will be 4-1, so it'll be really neck to neck. Carolina will have a tough challenge against Seattle the second to last week, while Tampa Bay has their hands with Miami. Tampa Bay should easily pick up a victory. And if Seattle's kind of on that back burner, maybe they've already clinched a wild card. Maybe they're just kind of taking that break, knowing that they're going to have to compete in 2 weeks. Maybe Carolina could slide and keep up. But even if what would end up having to happen if Carolina loses, they would have to also beat Tampa Bay on the road, which then will seal them into a 5-1 record, while the Buccaneers will have a 4-2. They're probably looking a way to at least get 10 wins here in the final parts of the season. Carolina almost looks like they're going to have to win out, but if they may have some room, if they could beat Tampa Bay on Christmas weekend, they may have some room to take care of business. If they could beat Tampa Bay, they may have some room to lose against Seattle, but they wouldn't have room to lose both games against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay would just have to beat, honestly, Carolina, and then kind of almost win out from there. That AFC South, I don't know what happened. Carolina, I haven't seen this much coming out from Carolina since Cam Newton in years past. So I'm liking it. I love the thrill. I enjoy the thrill the most. It's really impressive. I have grown to enjoy the back ends of these seasons because it creates a lot of good football to watch. And what I like so far about this is that so far these games are kind of spread out, right? We're not getting them all in 1 week. We get to kind of see them over the next 5 weeks of football here. So let's jump into the NFC West division here. This is really a toss-up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, San Francisco has a bye this week. They're going to have to sit on and wait to see what the results coming out from Seattle and Los Angeles. The Rams have a 2-1 lead in the division over Seattle. They have that, 750 percentage over the 692 for San Francisco. Arizona's out of it. They're 6 games back. They have no room, and they're out of the postseason, the wild card, because San Francisco holds that 7th and final spot as we speak. Now, what gets interesting here is that there's 2 more division games for the 49ers and for the Seahawks. That's going to be for the Seahawks. That's going to be the Rams, and mark your calendars, December 18th, that you're really going to want to watch. It's a nighttime game, but that's probably going to really be that push point of who takes the division. Seattle, they're taking on Atlanta this week. It should almost be an easy win. I know they'll play very aggressive following week against Indianapolis, but then they have Carolina, and I think that they could also be it. So it's going to come down to, hey, can we win out, or how many, limit the amount of games you lose. With San Francisco having a bye, it's going to be important for Seattle and Los Angeles this weekend to captivate and take the lead over over San Francisco and make them still be one game back, because San Francisco has a 4-1 division record, and they only have to face, look at this. San Francisco only has to face Seattle. I feel like San Francisco has an easy record heading into the final season or final few weeks. They got Tennessee, they're in Indianapolis, they're home to Chicago, and they're home to Seattle. I don't know. And when you look at the Rams schedule, they're taking on Arizona here. They'll find Arizona in the back end in the last game of the season, so that should be 2 easy wins for them. They're taking on Detroit next week, and then they have Seattle, so they have a couple of big, tough battles here in the upcoming week, so anything can happen. This isn't more so who captures the division. Yeah, you want to capture the division because right now the standings, playoff picture wise, Rams have the number 2 seed. They sit at 9-3, but it's also going to be about where do you sit at the seedings, because Seattle holds that 5th spot. It could be easily vice versa of if you're going to have that first week bye, or if you're going to have a first week on the road taking on Tampa Bay or Carolina, in my opinion. Now, look, let me reiterate where the standing is here for the NFC. We have the Bears with the 9-3 record, the Rams with a 9-3 record. If the playoffs end today, they have the bye. The Eagles with an 8-4 record, followed by the Buccaneers at 7-5. Seattle is at 9-3. Green Bay is at 8-3-1. And the 49ers are in 9-4. So if you look at any other team, we have the Giants, Saints, and Arizona right now out of the wild card. Washington's out of the wild card. Okay? With San Francisco on a bye. I know it's kind of in hindsight, but Atlanta and Minnesota kind of can look in and stretch right there. Right? We talked about what Dallas needs to do, what Carolina needs to do, and what Detroit needs to do. But I don't see any of, other than Chicago. I don't see, nope. There's not a single team below San Francisco that the 49ers are going to have to step up. So realistically, you're almost looking at this wild card separation. You may sit on it this week. If Detroit wins, they move to 8-4. They make things interesting for the 7th spot. It could also mean if Chicago could beat Green Bay moves to 8-4 under the 700%. And can kind of make things interesting in the 6th and 7th seed. But you're also wanting to look out for Seattle and Los Angeles, because a couple of losses here in the back end, Detroit has a chance against Dallas this week to separate everyone else and to finally, hey, we're going to tune in right there with San Francisco. But they also see the Rams next week. And if they could let's say they beat Dallas and the Rams, okay, that gives the Rams a loss. They move to 10-4. Seattle could win 2, so that's 11-3. That's 1. That's 10-4. San Francisco has a better division record, so the Rams are in the 7th spot. But because Detroit beats them, wins 2, that's 8, 9, and 9-5. I mean, you're one game back. I know it kind of sounds confusing. It does, but if you look at it, I encourage you to find time, whether it's on your phone or if you could go pop up to an internet and just look at this and understand exactly where I'm sitting at. It's going to be that final stretch, but I think a lot of these teams need to be pushing for their division because they have that opportunity in the division before even anyone. Just let wild cards fall where they really need to fall. All right. A lot out of the way. That's the NFC. Let's jump over to the AFC because that's a whole nother picture. A lot of fun stuff's happening, by the way, in the NFC. Right now in the AFC West, we will be looking at the New England Patriots, 8-2. They got 3 games above Buffalo, who sit at 8-4. You have the Dolphins 3 games back from that at 5-7, and the Jets at 3-9. And the reason why the Jets haven't been eliminated just yet is because this final wild card spot, the Bills 8-4, only 3 games, only 5 games back. Buffalo can easily knock the Jets out of a postseason by picking up a victory this weekend against the Cincinnati Bengals, and that's a whole nother conversation we'll get into in just a moment. But Buffalo has been struggling this season. I can't tell you enough. They hold the 7th seed in the wild card as we speak. They're on the verge of they don't really have much room to error between in who's in the hunt of the wild cards after Buffalo. You have Houston at 7-5, Pittsburgh at 6-6, Kansas City at 6-6, Miami's at 5-7, and Cincinnati's at 4-8. We're not looking at a wild card for Cincinnati, but just wanted to throw that out there. So, you know, a lot of things have to go the Jets' way to see a postseason run. We know that they're out of the division. If you are the Jets, you have to win out for first and foremost. That'll be an 8-9 record. That means Buffalo has to lose. Okay. Buffalo's going to have to find a way that they can lose. And their schedule's not easy. They take on New England again. They take on Philadelphia. It could happen if, Cleveland pulls away a victory. But that's what they're going to have to do. They'll have to find a way to lose. And the Jets would have to win. Now, on top of that, Miami is going to end up having to lose 3. Okay? Or 3 as well. And the Jets are coming up with the Miami. And it starts this week because the Jets see Miami one more time this weekend, kick off at 1 o'clock. So we're seeing the bottom of this division. I think Miami will like to do the honors on the road and keep the Jets and send the other New York team off to next season. So if you guys are an Eastern team, if you guys are New York fans, maybe tune into this game on Sunday and see if the Jets keep their postseason alive. If Buffalo beats Cincinnati, that's also, it doesn't matter what the Jets do if Buffalo beats Cincinnati. And I think that game got moved up to a 1 o'clock game. So you're going to have that double, game, that double vision on your TV this weekend. So, and then the Patriots, they have a bye this week. But they got Buffalo, Baltimore, been pretty shaky. And then they got the 2 divisions against the Jets and Miami. So it almost looks to me, look, if Buffalo needs to keep things going, they need to keep the ball going in their favor. The way they do that is by beating the Bengals this weekend. They move up to 9-4. They see the Patriots one more time. And all you can do is do whatever you can to beat the Patriots. It'll be at Gillette Stadium, Foxborough. I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but it's going to be one of those, probably a playoff atmosphere games, because whoever wins this game, well, if the Patriots win, they almost secure this division. In hindsight, right? It's not going to be over yet, but they practically secure this division. If Buffalo wins, if they could beat Cincinnati, they move to 9-4. They beat the Patriots, they move to 10-4. They only have a game back. And who says if New England loses to Buffalo, they don't lose to Baltimore, who is also trying to make a run at their division? You still have the Jets in Miami that I'm sure will like to make their final pushes towards and try to either knock out a team from the playoffs or do a little bit of damage. Miami is also looking to find a wild card spot that is on. There's still the dream there. Let's entertain that. So I look at Miami's schedule. and I say, is it possible that you can win all your games? You're in New York, you end their season. You're in Pittsburgh, and you're taking advantage of a vulnerable Aaron Rodgers. You're home to Cincinnati. You're hoping their postseason is out of touch, and that's a nighttime game. There's back-to-back nighttime games, and then unless that gets changed, and I don't know yet. But then your true challenge are going to be the final 2 weeks. So let's say you could win the next three. That'll move you at 8-7. You have Tampa Bay and you have New England. Is that enough to do Buffalo? I mean, if Buffalo beat Cincinnati, beat New England, that's 2, that's 9, and that's 10. That kind of knocks you out. Who else is in it? Colts is number 6. Look at what the Colts maybe have upcoming here. Give me 1 second. Let me get to the Colts schedule. The Colts, they're in Jacksonville, in Seattle. So let's say they lose. That'll put them at not 9. That's not 9-6. That put at 8-6. So it's lose. That's 8-7. So you could tie with the Colts. The Colts would almost have to lose out also, and the Dolphins would have to win out. So you'd have to find a way to beat Tampa Bay and then New England and win out. So I say this, I know it sounds confusing, but I trust me, I say this because things can happen. So I see that Patriots continue, they win the division. I think they're just too good. I know they have a bye. Unless the bye really gets to them and Buffalo comes in with the victory along with Baltimore, that's 2 wins. But to really, I think a disappointing season to see the Patriots turn up and lose against the Jets and the Miami, I don't see that happening. And since Buffalo 1, 2, 3, 4 would get you at 12, and they win, so they get 12. And they have a better division. So that would lose 2, 3. So, New England would have a 4-2 division record with Buffalo having a 3-3, which puts them overhead. So Buffalo, they're still going to fight. That. I know that for a fact, but it's really more locking down that wild card spot. All right, we jump into the AFC North because this is where things get interesting, because the only reason why Cleveland's not knocked out of the wild card is because or out of the postseason is because they are 3 games back from their division. Cleveland has this schedule ahead of them, and I wanted to look at that. They're home to Tennessee. They're in Chicago, which I don't see them winning. They're home to Buffalo. I don't see them winning. They're home to Pittsburgh. I could see them win. And then they're on the road to Cincinnati. So, I mean, if let's say they beat Tennessee, that moves them to 4-9. That dropped them down to 4-11. They would have to beat Pittsburgh. That'll be 5-11 to 6-11. 6-11 enough. Well, it's going to be kind of hard, and this is where I say no, because Baltimore meets Pittsburgh this week, and someone's going to have to win, unless it's a tie, which I don't think it's going to happen twice, because Baltimore in 5 weeks will also see Pittsburgh again in the final game of the season. So Cleveland is not technically eliminated, quote unquote, but they're there. They're right there in hindsight, right? And I just think for Cleveland, they keep Shedeur Sanders out there. They keep pushing him out there to play the game. You see what he's capable of in this back end. Maybe he can make things interesting. It's not going to look pretty, but the Browns need to kind of figure out what quarterback do they want to go with this year? I would think it would be such a disappointment to draft not one but two quarterbacks, yet to then um, have go back into the draft and have to find another quarterback. I or go into free agency again. I don't know what that deal is, but uh, to me, it's important that they finish off the season strong. Now, the other thing that I think for us Cincinnati fans, we get worried about is on this back end because our schedule isn't any easier than what the Browns have. And on top of that, the last thing I think anybody wants to do is to be in last place of their division. And if you're telling me that Cleveland's been in the bottom, at the back end of the division this entire season, and they find a way to finish off above the Bengals, I feel we would be. I don't know. I'd probably break something, in my opinion. Listen, the Bengals, it's very easy. They came away with a win on Thanksgiving against the Ravens. It was a comfortable win. It looked like a well-rounded team for the first time this season. The defense were on point. They took advantage of a poor and sloppy Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense. They were able to establish the run game and get that passing game. You just were reminded how good that 1-2 punch combination is with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow looks like he didn't miss a step. This is what elevates Joe Burrow from a lot of other quarterbacks to being out nearly an entire season, hop back in, backs up against the wall. You're still dealing with the turf toe injury because I can almost guarantee you he's not 100%. And he acts like it's just another day at the office, and it's not like he's missed a step at all. So those things I think are stuff that we take for granted, and we really want to appreciate it. But the Bengals are going to have to just sweep out. They got to beat Buffalo this weekend. They got to beat Baltimore. They got to beat Miami, Arizona, and Cleveland. And this is one of the scenarios where you can only do, if you do what you're supposed to do and let fate control the rest. So here's the interesting mark. We are 3-1. The Ravens are 2-1. The Steelers are 2-1 in their division. Not worried about the Browns 0-4. The Steelers are at Buffalo, so someone's going to pick up a victory. Let's walk this through. So let's say Baltimore picks up the victory. I don't care here. I'm just going to use Baltimore. Baltimore moves to 7-6. Bengals could win, so they move to 5-8. Okay. Steelers move to 6-7. Ravens move to 7-8. Ravens go to 3-1, while Pittsburgh goes to 2-4. Right? No, 2-2. Excuse me. Excuse me. And then you would need that magic number is going to be 9. So 2 more wins would be the Ravens. The Ravens in this factor would have an upcoming schedule of Cincinnati. So let's say the Bengals could win. They'll move to 6-8, and they'll move them to 7-7. Pittsburgh has Miami afterwards, so I'm assuming they're going to probably win. So they'll move back to 7-7. That will put the Ravens at a 3-2, while the Bengals have a 4-1, and that will give them a division opportunity. The Ravens then take on the Patriots and then the Packers, which they could possibly lose. That would be 7-9, right? Yeah, that'll be 7-9 if they lose those two, which then the best outcome is if they beat the Steelers again, they would be 8-9, but we would be 9-8, and to be an advantage of that, right? See how that plays out a little bit? I'm just spitballing here. Now, if Pittsburgh, then you look at Pittsburgh's schedule, so they're They lose to Baltimore, which that'll be 6-7. They win against Miami, be 7-7. They lose to Detroit. That'll be 7-8. They win against Cleveland 8-8, and then they lose to Baltimore. That's 8-9 also, but they wind up in the third because the Ravens have a better division record. In my opinion, I think they'll be tied. So that's the best outcome in that scenario. Bengals win out. They move to 9-8. That means they win 2 division games. They'll be 5-1. Ravens, let's say Pittsburgh beats the Ravens. So Pittsburgh's 7-7 or 7-6. They beat Miami, which is 8-6. They lose to Detroit, it's 8-7. They beat Cleveland 9-7, and then they could beat Baltimore. That'll be 10-7. Well, if you swap those 2 victories out of 8-9, they'd be 6-10. So the Ravens will be in third place. But then let's say they split. I'm just theoretically spitballing. So they split. So let's say Baltimore takes the first game, then they lose to Cincinnati, then they lose to New England News to play. So they lose out basically. That'll be 4. That'll be 10. That'll be 7-10. While the Steelers, they'd lose, win. So 7-7, 7-8, 8-8, 8-9 still. That's the best thing they could go for. So, first of all, if the Bengals win out, it's a tall task to incline because you still got Buffalo. You're looking at a best 9-8 record. You need kind of a drained point here for both Baltimore and Pittsburgh to lose. If you look at the wild card spot, Baltimore whoever wins the division will more likely just hold that final spot, division spot. That will probably face either the Chargers or the Colts in this, or even Buffalo. But Pittsburgh's in a wild card, but they're 2 games behind. So the earliest is 8-4. You would have to have Baltimore, Pittsburgh to do what you need. Buffalo to play bad, as well as Houston and Pittsburgh come up on 2 games. So it looks like the AFC North is nothing but the division with some slow chances. I know we stay hopeful, but let's put it this way. There is I don't see it. I mean, even if they split that 7-7 each, you're telling me that they would have to practically lose out the rest of both Baltimore and Pittsburgh have to lose out. If let's say here's the thing. If they split that 7-7, if Baltimore beats Cincinnati next week, the best we could do is 8-9. We'd have 2 losses. They'd have a loss, so they'll be both 4-2. We'll split that, but they'll go with the Baltimore. They would have to lose out still. And then the Ravens and Cincinnati will be 8-8. And we've split between Pittsburgh and Baltimore, which is a never good idea. Then it goes down. Does it go down to points? Which right now, Baltimore has 208, has 9 points more. So, yeah. The work's cut out. We got to also focus on getting back to just 500 football at home, which would be nice. All right, let's dive into the AFC South, because Daniel Jones and those Colts had a good, solid start to the season. They kind of been sloppy the last couple of weeks. They've allowed Jacksonville to catch up and surpass them, because Jacksonville has a 2-1 division lead, as well as the Colts. They're very neck to neck now. And Houston has found themselves with a 7-5 record. On the outside looking in, they have a 4-1 division record. They're going to play one more division time against the Colts, and that could be nail biting as we learn who will be in and who will be out. There's no postseason. There's no wild card spot. So if you're Houston, Unless, oh, by the way, Tennessee's 1-11. They've been eliminated. They have not won a division game so far this season. So if you're Houston, you're taking on Kansas City, which is going to be a challenge, but you look, Kansas City has opened the door for those. If you want to beat them, you could beat them. Go on and do so. Then you have Arizona, which I could see you winning. Then Vegas, take on the Raiders, which it could be another win. But then you have the Chargers, and then you have the Colts. So if you lose one, that's 7-6. You're only a game back on the division, but you do have a division lead. But even if you beat Indianapolis, the best you could do is 5-1. I think Jacksonville or Indianapolis could kind of get you that run for your money. Jacksonville could also do 5-1 if they sweep the Colts. So your really big challenges coming up this weekend for Texans at Kansas City. Your two big challenges are going to be in Kansas City, in Los Angeles, to take on the Chargers and the Chiefs. If you could prevail those, you'd have to beat those Colts. The Colts, on this hand, they're in Jacksonville this week, which I think is one of the games that we really want to tune into and watching. They're in Seattle, so their schedule is a little tougher. You may actually find themselves looking out at the end of all of this. Because, look, I mean, you're just one game back. Houston, I can at least see Houston taking Arizona and Raiders. That's +2. Depending if you could beat Jacksonville or not, I mean, you may drop to Seattle, may drop to San Francisco. And then if Houston beats Colts, I mean, this can be it was a good idea early on in the season. Now it turns into, it was just a waste side here. Jaguars will see the Colts this Sunday. They kind of have the easier record among the top leading, where they face the Jets. They're in Denver. They're in Indianapolis. And then they're home to Tennessee. So the last week could prevail. So if you split the series, they both go 9-5. I could see the Jaguars beating the Titans and beating the Jets. So that's 11-5. Because 11-5. You lose, it'll be 11-6. And then for the Colts, I maybe split. If you beat Houston, split the series, that'll be 9-5. That'll be 10-6. You'd have to beat Houston to be in that water, but Jacksonville clinches. For Houston, you need I want to say, because you're still 2 games back with a wild card. That'll be 9-5. 9-6. Maybe 10-6 and 11-6 to get you in if you maybe not beat the Chiefs, but beat the Chargers. Excuse me. But this is going to come down to the race. Let's jump over to the AFC West here real quick. We've kind of already gone over an hour here in our football conversation. The Broncos lead with a 10-2 record. They are 2-1 on the division. They kick things off in Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. They have one of the most challenging schedules left on their roll call, but it seems like this team that was lifted up by their defense has found some offensive power with Bo Nix. They will take on Green Bay, which will be up in the air. Jacksonville's net left, which I can see Denver winning. Then you have Kansas City and the Chargers. And you could possibly, I think the overall goal here is to get Kansas City out of the postseason for the first time since in the last 10 years. That's kind of what I think they're looking at here. Final 2 games could very well determine Kansas City's fate. Kansas City is 6-6. There's 4 games back. They are on the outside looking in at, 2 games back of Buffalo. With their upcoming schedule, they're home to Houston, home to the Chargers, in Tennessee. I feel like that's 3 easy wins. That goes 9. Maybe a coin flip with them in Denver, and then you pick up a victory. That's 10-7. Is that enough to either toss out the Colts or toss out Buffalo? The Chargers, on the other hand, okay, are the Chargers. Here we go. If they go, they are right now in that wild card spot at 8-4. They take on Philadelphia. So let's say they lose. Let's say they lose to the Chiefs. They could beat the Cowboys. And then they beat Houston. That's 10. And then Denver. So the Chargers are kind of in that loss mix. But also on top of that, Kansas City's only 1-2 in the division. The Chargers are undefeated in the division. They look to keep that going as a only 4-0. Yeah, they're 4-0. They beat the Raiders. So they take on, if they could beat the Eagles somehow, and even if they lose to Kansas City, they have to make that up with Dallas, Houston, and then they'll come down to the Denver game. So but the question, here's what's shooting everyone in the foot here is that Kansas City is on the verge. They're not in a playoff picture at the moment. And they're kind of actually pretty far behind. There are 4 games back of the Broncos, and there are 2 games back of the Bills and the Colts, or in the Chargers, let's just say. So do they have an opportunity to maybe slide into one of the wild card spots? Yes. A lot of things have to go their way. That begins with them picking up their game and playing better. And that's going to mean that they're going to have to beat the Chargers and find a way to beat the Broncos and beat the Raiders. That, I think, is suitable, right? Compared, and I never would want to count out the Chiefs until I officially see that E next to them in the standings. I can't count them out just yet because they're the only team so far in recent years, compared to the Chargers and the Broncos, that knows what it takes to get to a postseason, that knows what it takes to get back to the postseason and give themselves some extra life. So I can't rule them out just yet. Houston's not eliminated. They may be on the hindsight of a wild card, but I'd go all force against your own division. You have the division lead in that record. So the best you could do is tie with Jacksonville or Indianapolis, and you'll be better than them automatically. Now, you don't face Jacksonville, but that means Jacksonville is going to have to sweep Indianapolis and beat Tennessee, which I think they may lose one or the other. The AFC North shouldn't be this lackluster, and the things were getting started off to a good start with the Bengals early on until Joe Burrow got hurt. Their hopes quickly failed and kind of re-sparked when they could beat Pittsburgh 1 game, but that's all that Joe Flacco could have mustered. And then Baltimore got off to a late start. Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, but when Baltimore finds their click, they move right in. But it feels like the damage has been done. Baltimore's in that driver's seat right now, but they can't walk into Pittsburgh thinking, hey, we have these two teams easily and prevail. But they could win those two games. Like we mentioned, they can move to 8-6 in that record, which wouldn't be a good idea for the Bengals. It would still have to win out. So we could look at the wild card here in the AFC. No one's quite safe yet here from any division. I think the earliest one we could see is the Colts locking up the East, or the Patriots locking up the East here soon. Denver could also lock up a division with a couple of wins over the next 2-3 weeks as well. Down here in the NFC, no one's separating and no one's taking it away. Cowboys, yeah, they're still 6-5, but they're only 2 games back, and there's still a lot to be determined. That's what I like about this season, is that nothing's really locked in set in the, right here a month away from the end of the season. That's just going to make interesting football. Coming up tonight, we have the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions. A lot of playoff implications riding on them, as they both are on the outside of the wild card, looking in. A win kind of puts them in that position. With the Lions, it'll put them one game closer to the 7th spot of the division of the wild card, as the 49ers have to sit this week off of a bye. Cowboys, if they pull off a victory, and upsetting the Lions, they will slide into the Lions position and swap places with them in the standings, but they'll still be 2 games back of the 49ers. So I think the 49ers want the Cowboys to win. Coming up here on Sunday, we have the Bengals and Bills. This will determine the fate of the Bengals, whether or not they still are in a postseason hunt. Can Joe Burrow go back and make a repeat of what they did on Thanksgiving, but against Josh Allen? Then we have the Colts and Jaguars that would be fighting for the first place position over the AFC South. A big game coming out of Jacksonville. Don't want to miss. The Dolphins get a chance to knock out the Jets in the playoffs. Right? Did I say that right? Yes. The Dolphins get a chance to officially knock out the Jets on their home turf this Sunday out of the postseason. Buccaneers look to continue growing and pick up another victory. I would be watching closely. I don't care about the Bengals and Bills, but I want to see what the Steelers and the Ravens do. One will take over the AFC North Division unless it ends in a tie. Seattle and the Rams are 2 games to watch. They're facing teams that they should be picking up victories with, but that also battles over the NFC West Division. Titan Browns games probably gets pushed to the side, as well as the Commanders and Vikings. Broncos looking up to extend their shots over the Raiders as they improve. The Packers, I think the afternoon game to really watch, maybe on Fox right here, is the Bears and Packers trying to take over the division here. Sunday night football, we have the Texans and the Chiefs. Both teams trying to make that argument, not just in their division, but in the postseason, but in the wild card standings, and then the Chargers trying to stay alive. Look, the Eagles are considered, in my opinion, the heavyweight team here, through and through. Right? It's given. It's not anything more, anything less. We've seen. Look at your heavyweight teams, and I think we need to reestablish who are your heavyweight teams this offseason. But I have the Eagles, Packers, Rams, Bears are now in the conversation. The Lions were in the conversation earlier this year. I don't know where they stand out now. Seahawks. When we talk about teams like the Buccaneers, for example, they've had all season long have had to deal with this up top. Go take on a heavyweight. You're a good team. Go take on these better teams. If you could go toe to toe and hang in with them, then we can take you seriously. You can fit in with us, but you're just right now on the outside. The Chargers, they made an impressive run. I get that, but you're facing the Super Bowl defending champions. Both may have their same record, but you guys aren't the same teams. So the Chargers need to now to know how to complete these games, how to finish off this back end of the season, while you look at the Eagles. If you could knock over the Eagles, I may want to be taking the Chargers just a little bit more seriously in this upcoming wild card. So, man, that was a lot of stuff. Over an hour and 15 minutes. I promise you guys, I am wrapping up here. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you guys are listening to us on any social media platforms, hit that like, share, subscribe button. Leave a comment below. I want to hear what you guys are thinking. If you guys have thoughts, who's going to run away with each division? I got Patriots taking the East. I'm going to call it. I know, don't go against it, but I got the Ravens taking the North, the Broncos taking the West. Let me see what I got. I got Tampa Bay taking away the South so far. The Eagles taking away the East as well. So who do you guys have? Who's going to be knocked out? Does a loss against the Chargers, are they knocked out of the postseason, or are they still alive, and can they hold on? Or will Kansas City be knocked out of the postseason for the first time in 10 years? So this is the fun time of the NFL. But want to hear what you guys have to say. So wherever you guys are at, head on. If you don't have a spot, maybe you're listening to us on our audio podcast, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, whatever, iHeartRadio. Head over to our YouTube channel, TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Leave a comment down there in the community. Let's engage, and maybe we'll find your comments on our upcoming episodes. We will be back tomorrow with another episode to wrap up the week. I've been feeling better. Unfortunately, I'm still dealing with this cough, as you could tell throughout today's episode, so I do apologize. Look, I want to give a big shout out. I know it's a holiday season, but Enlighten Studios is back at it again. Good buddies of mine, collaborating with them, and hopefully we see a lot more projects moving away. But Enlighten Studios Incorporation has big plans for 2026, and one of their first big plans is to launch as their upcoming production of Grassroots will be displayed at the Artsville in Cincinnati, Ohio, 5021 Wetzel Avenue in Cincinnati, Ohio, 45227, on February 20th to the 22nd, and then February 27th to the March 1st. 8 performances over those 2 weeks. We have a 7 o'clock performance on both Fridays, a 2 and 7 o'clock performance on both Saturdays, and then a 2 o'clock performance on both Sundays. Tickets going to be available on tickettailor.com/events/Enlighten Studios. If you Google search Grassroots Enlighten Studios, you'll pop up on the link. I will have a link below for your tickets. You want to get them down. They only seat 150. Enlighten Studios is growing. They're doing great work out here, and they're only looking to grow. They got a lot of big projects. I can't wait to share with you guys and talk about it. But I know we will be there and talking about it as well. We're partnering up with them. So get your tickets if you haven't done so yet. They'll have some sales going on coming up here at the end of the calendar year. But it's only 3 months away. So you want to get those tickets and get plans to attend one of these productions. Don't want to miss out that. So that is all the time I have for you guys today. Want to thank everyone for tuning in. And until next time, you guys have a great, wonderful rest of your day. Take care.